So what is the deal with gluten? Most likely many, if not the majority of you, have heard some claim about the substance gluten, that a gluten-free diet is merely a fad, or that people should refrain from eating it altogether. Personally, I enjoy many foods that contain some form of gluten, but will mostly refrain from eating them, and I'll explain why. First off, gluten is a rather broad term that encompasses proteins found in grains, such as the commonly discussed form alpha-glutin, found in wheat, as well as the lesser-known form, zane, which is found in corn. The intake of alpha-glutin can lead to a condition commonly referred to in the realm of functional medicine, termed leaky gut, which is exactly what it sounds like. Your gut becomes permeable as well as inflamed, and therefore paving the way for a host of deleterious effects to occur in your body. The common response people have to the idea that grains are bad for them can be defensive, but also incredulous, as to them, they've eaten grains all their life and have not observed any negative effects on their health. Although some people do better with the consumption of grains than others, is it really the case they have no effect on you? There are a lot of conditions that we may look past, such as eating processed food since childhood, resulting in abdominal discomfort, but we essentially become anesthetized to a solicited state over the years as we perceive it as normal. You may even face an elicited sense of irritability or depression that, although you ascribe to some recent event, is ultimately the ramification of intestinal inflammation due to the consumption of some form of grain. The next time you consume some form of grain, such as pizza, I want you to really focus on how your gut feels, as well as your emotional state, as a bit of an experiment. Moreover, on the topic of experiments, there was a study wherein participants were separated into groups based on their history of susceptibility to negative reaction to gluten consumption, which included a control group with no history of this. Now, in most studies, you'll normally have some variance across the subjects or samples. However, in this study, although there were groups that were affected to a greater extent, all of them, following exposure to alpha-glutin, exhibited signs of intestinal permeability. Okay, so what is the significance of intestinal permeability or leaky gut? Under normal circumstances, food passes through the intestine while breaking down so it can pass through the walls of the intestine and into the bloodstream. Now, when damage has occurred due to the consumption of gluten, resulting in leaky gut, larger or macromolecules are able to pass through into the bloodstream prior to being broken down. This can result in a number of negative health consequences. As Dr. Peter Osborne states in his book, No Grain, No Pain, quote, due to permeability, the gut wall becomes compromised, allowing a barrage of foreign substances to flood the immune system, leading to systematic inflammation, as well as the development of multiple food-based allergies. The body creates antibodies that attack these foreign substances. Some of these foreign substances resemble tissues in the body in what is called molecular mimicry. Over time, the immune system turns on its own tissues, including muscles, tendons, ligaments, bone, cartilage, and nerves, leading to an all-out autoimmune assault on the body. The inflammatory damage caused by leaky gut results in inhibited digestion, compromised nutrition, and loss of vitamins and minerals. Chronic gut inflammation changes the ratio of healthy gut bacteria, contributing to yeast overgrowth and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO for short. The breakdown in the intestinal barrier leads to persistent and chronic pain and inflammation, end quote. This is not the full list of potential consequences, such as neurological ones. And even worse, this lengthy list doesn't at all take into account the added processed chemicals that commonly accompany grains and processed foods such as refined sugar on a cinnamon roll. Talk about an addictive as well as deadly combination, and especially when considering sugar's association with cancer. Making an adequate alteration to the diet, although easier for some than others, may not be that simple for multiple reasons. Finances, where you live, and of course addiction are all legitimate reasons why people may find themselves reluctant to or perceive that they are unable to make any changes. Furthermore, even if you do make the change, there is something called cross-contamination to keep in mind. Cross-contamination occurs generally during the preparation phase of foods. For instance, say you're someone who enjoys oatmeal. Well, in the event these oats you're consuming were transported on a truck that previously contained wheat, or processed in a factory with equipment previously exposed to wheat, and no cleaning method was practiced in between these sessions, This can actually expose you to alpha-gluten. A good way to mitigate your chances of being exposed to cross-contaminated foods would be to select for products specifically labeled as gluten-free. It is also very common for cross-contamination to occur when processed foods contain alpha-gluten, but the source is marked as an inconspicuous name on the package, so I've provided a useful video in the references section in the event you have an interest in looking further into this topic. This video, of course, is not to tell you what you should or should not consume. However, chronic health conditions tend to be common in contemporary society, as we are all constantly bombarded with a multitude of substances in the environment. And as such, this may be a piece of the puzzle of you getting your health back. Even if you feel completely fine, I urge you to try cutting out processed foods, and especially ones containing gluten, for 2 weeks and see how you feel. Generally, people eat these fast-digesting carbohydrates. It doesn't make them feel full, as it's devoid of nutrients, and this perpetuates the cycle of them continuing to eat, so why not give it a try? You may even save a few dollars. I want to say thank you to everyone that supported me, really appreciate it, and helps the channel grow. And if you got something out of this content, please like, share, comment, subscribe, consider donating and becoming a patron, and as always, here's the research, and take care.